Good afternoon. I want to tell you about a second grader named Diana Crespo Gonzalez. She loves to draw. She loves school. And on January 16th, she was sick. She had a persistent fever. Her nose wouldn't stop bleeding. Her parents did what any good parents would do. They took their child to see a doctor. They never made it inside. Instead, immigration agents surrounded their car. The parents pleaded with the agents to just let their daughter get seen. Think about that for a second. Put yourself in their car, wondering if you made a mistake by taking your child to a doctor. Shortly after, Diana and her parents were detained and transported 2,000 miles from their home in Gresham, Oregon, to the Dilley Child Family Detention Facility in Texas, the largest child detention facility in the United States. I will say that again, the largest child detention facility in the United States. That is a sentence that should not exist. And the conditions at Dilley are not just bad, they are indefensible and inhumane. The food is inedible. One father detained there with his child said, quote, "We were given wormy food. And when someone spoke out about it and said that the children should get better food, he was taken in the middle of the night and threatened that he and his family would be separated," unquote. Another said, quote, "Sometimes there are strange things in the food, and it seems like strange parts of an animal that shouldn't be in the food. But many children do not eat the food here. It worries me when there are so many small children who are just not eating." A 14-year-old said his 7-year-old brother stopped eating entirely. Many report that the water is not drinkable, that it is too salty and smells of chemicals, that if you do drink it, your stomach turns with pain. And it is not just food and water, the foundation of human life, as if that weren't bad enough. These kids and families are also being deprived of sleep, health care, and education. Children inside have reported ideals of self-harm, even suicide. A 14-year-old who was detained for 45 days said, "Since I got to the center, all you will feel is sadness and mostly depression." And if you advocate for yourself as a parent, if you advocate for your child, there is the threat of retaliation. One father said, quote, "We are scared to ask for anything because the officers start threatening us that they'll put us in different detention centers and put our children in foster care." This is where they sent Diana, a second grader, who just needed to see a doctor. I couldn't stand back while she was in prison there, and I had a chance to help. One of the most important lessons I've learned in my first year in Congress is that you cannot defend your constituents from behind a desk. Showing up and advocating for the people you represent matters. So I traveled to Texas with plane tickets in hand to bring Diana and her parents back to Oregon. When I arrived, officials repeatedly blocked my entry, giving shifting contradictory explanations as to why. I was told I could not enter because of measles cases, despite an officer telling me just the day before there were no active cases and no risk. I was told to leave, I was told to wait, I was told nothing at all. The message was clear: don't look too closely. Oversight isn't optional. When ICE blocked me from entering, I made it clear if they would not let me in, they needed to at least bring my constituents out to speak with me. After hours of waiting and arguing, ICE actually did more than that. They released the Crespo Gonzalez family altogether. I was able to escort them home. Diana made it home. But there are children today who are still trapped in Dilley. Legally, children are not supposed to be in custody for more than 20 days, yet dozens of children have been detained at Dilley for over 3 months, a third of a school year spent in prison. Children who are sick, children who are scared, children who do not understand why this is happening to them. And it is not just children who have been detained that feel the trauma of this immigration crackdown. Children in my district live in fear of the Iceman. He comes to them in their dreams, and it worries them that they're going to come to get them or a loved one. I heard it from a teacher in Oregon who shared how devastating ICE's presence has been for her students. She said, quote, "Many students stopped coming to school for weeks, either because their parents did not feel safe to bring them to school, or because the students did not feel safe to leave their parents, for they weren't sure they would still be at their home when they got there." Across this country, ICE is targeting children outside of schools, outside of clinics, outside of their own homes. Immigration enforcement against children is inhumane and unnecessary. Families can and should be able to navigate their immigration cases together and in community with the support of loved ones and legal services. This is about who we are and who we want to be as a country. Kids need care and compassion, not cruelty and cages. Today, we will spotlight the importance of ending cruel immigration enforcement against children once and for all. And now I'm very honored to yield to the gentleman from New York and my co-host for this important event, Mr. Tonko.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Congresswoman Dexter, for being such a strong and bold voice for justice and fairness in this House. You're such a great, welcome addition to the caucus and to the House, and we appreciate your work. We are convening this effort because of the urgent discussion that's necessary to bring very strong, laser-sharp focus to this issue. The Trump administration has repeatedly shown that it is willing to use any method in its brutal and inhumane immigration agenda. That includes detaining kids like 5-year-old Liam Ramos on his way home from school in January in Minnesota, or ending long-standing guidance that banned immigration enforcement activities at sensitive locations like our hospitals, our courthouses, or our schools. It includes putting a former ICE official in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR, the agency responsible for unaccompanied children. It is no surprise, then, that this administration is treating unaccompanied children like criminals. Often, these children arriving in the United States without a parent or guardian are fleeing persecution, violence, and trafficking. Congress expressly authorized the ORR to care for unaccompanied children with a separate charge from immigration enforcement. However, tragically, over the past year, the ORR and ICE have become one in the same, and it's traumatizing our children. Unaccompanied children are now being held by ORR for an average of over 200 days. Let me repeat that. Kids who fled all that they've ever known alone are being held by our government for over a half a year of their life. They thought they were coming to America for a better life. In many instances, these facilities are failing to provide basic care to these children. Yet, they continue to hold these kids, even when they have a family member who is ready to care for them outside of ORR custody. Take Diego. His father was approved to care for him after he arrived unaccompanied in 2024. But he was redetained in November of 2025 and held for 4 months because of a new DNA requirement by ORR. To make matters worse, ORR is now sharing data and information on potential sponsors with ICE. So many parents and family members who want to care for these children are frightened to provide any information that could lead to their arrest or their detention. On several occasions, ICE has used these kids as a lure to detain family members. Carlos, a father with temporary protected status, was detained during a December 2025 appointment with ICE in New Mexico that he thought was a regular step in his effort to reunify with his 14 and 16-year-old children who had been held in ORR custody for almost a year. While Carlos was released on a judge's order, his children are still in ORR custody. His son is now 15 and regularly has panic attacks. His daughter is afraid that she will wait for her father forever. That is despicable. These draconian tactics are creating lasting trauma for these kids and their families, and we are already seeing the effects. No child should have to worry about whether they will be used as bait by the government. No child should sit in detention for months on end. No child should face additional trauma here in our United States. This issue is deeply personal for me. As a once New York State legislator, one of my proudest accomplishments was passing Timothy's Law, which enacted mental health care parity across the state of New York. The law was named after a young constituent of mine, Timothy O'Clair, who, after suffering with mental illness and not receiving the care that he needed, took his own life at 12 years of age. We must take the mental health of children seriously. They are not pawns. They are not bait. They are not criminals. They are children who deserve care. So stop traumatizing children. Stop the cruel immigration enforcement against our kids. And with that, I yield back to Representative Dexter.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from Vermont, Ms. Ballant.
Thank you to both my colleagues for holding this hearing. It's such an important issue that so many of our constituents care about, and I know that representing my home state of Vermont, people are just absolutely outraged by what's happening. So I'm a former teacher. I'm also mom of 2 teenagers, and I know deep in my bones that we have to care for all our children. And when I see ICE targeting children and using kids as bait to get to their parents, I feel sick. I'm disgusted. What has happened to our humanity, our moral compass in this country? From the start of Trump's term until last October, at least 3,800 kids were booked into ICE custody. This includes roughly 500 children under the age of 5 and at least 20 infants. Remember the experience of Liam Ramos? He was 5 years old when he was picked up. 5. I remember what my kids were doing when they were 5. My son and daughter were learning how to spell their names. They were learning how to count to 10. They were drawing and singing and riding their bikes. They were running around with wild abandon on a playground. This is what we're talking about when we talk about 5-year-old kids. And our government is locking them up with our taxpayer money. This is who President Trump and Stephen Miller want us to believe are villains in our national story. They're kids. They're kids. And as my colleague said, what's happening in these facilities? They don't have clean water. They don't have food that they can eat that isn't filled with worms. Think about that. There is nothing that justifies treating children like this. Nothing. They're our kids. And I'm using that because it's the truth of the matter. It's not somebody else's kids. These are our kids. They live in our community. They live in our districts. And we should care about all of our kids. Every single child in this country deserves care and humane treatment. It's that simple. What is happening at the hands of ICE is an abomination. Kids are not the enemy, and I can't believe I even have to say that on the floor of the House of Representatives in the United States of America, that kids are not the enemy. This is a fundamental question of decency and who we claim to be as Americans. Are we a country that looks at a child and sees innocence and wonder and potential, or are we looking at a child and seeing some kind of enemy, an enemy of the people? This is absurd. This is unconscionable. And again, it's happening with our taxpayer money. You cannot look away. I know what Vermonters believe, which is why I took to the floor today. Children deserve protection and dignity, period. No exceptions. We must fight together to find our way, our collective way, back to decency and compassion in this country. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you to Representatives Dexter and Tonko for shining a spotlight on the impact on children of the enforcement efforts of ICE and Customs and Border Protection agents. Here's what happens in communities across the country. A 1-year-old baby and his parents are pepper sprayed while driving to the grocery store. A high school student was zip-tied and detained on his way to school despite his U.S. citizenship, and he was detained for several days. Families with children were ripped out of bed in the dead of night, zip-tied and detained after the apartments that they lived in were raided by agents using military helicopters so Kristi Noem could get her videos. Children at a daycare, startled, scared, and traumatized by the armed agents bursting into their classrooms, chasing one of their teachers to abduct her. These scenes are not from a war zone. These are violent incidents that happened in Cicero, in Roscoe Village, in South Shore, and in my own neighborhood of Little Village in Chicagoland. And those are ICE and CBP agents paid by our tax dollars, committing atrocities, targeting my constituents and their children because of the color of their skin or the places where their parents worked. More than 500 children were being held at the Immigration Detention Center in Dilley, Texas. In January alone, many for more than twice the 20 days that the law allows the government to hold children in detention. We've seen the pictures drawn by some of these children, their letters, longing for their friends, schools, and families, a return to normalcy. Then the administration took away their crayons and paper so that these children outside the detention center wouldn't learn what was happening. Right now, 2 of my constituents are detained at Dilley, a mother and her 13-year-old son who were taken by ICE at a routine check-in appointment. Both have developed serious physical and mental issues, but ICE is denying them medical attention and medication. They're not the only ones. Children have suffered for months because of the abuses of ICE and CBP agents. Many of them may never overcome the trauma caused by their time in detention and the violent actions of our own government. The stories I shared are just some of the children we know about. There are hundreds of children terrorized by ICE who we don't know about. I ask my Republican colleagues, what is the purpose of imprisoning innocent children? No moral or legal argument exists to justify imprisoning and neglecting children. I implore my Republican colleagues to care for these children as if they were our own. Anything less is inexcusable. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Mr. Speaker, I rise to share Stephen's story. Who is Stephen, some might ask? Stephen is a constituent, and he's a 14-year-old boy, an 8th grader with autism, who spent 66 days incarcerated in Dilley Immigration Processing Center. Stephen and his dad are finally back home with their family and the community that loves him. But this past Monday, I accompanied Stephen and his father, Victor, to their check-in at ICE. I witnessed firsthand the pain and the trauma caused by the cruelty of separation and detention. Each day that Stephen spent in inhumane, unsanitary conditions in Delhi took a toll on this little boy. Stephen didn't want to go to his check-in on Monday because the last time he showed up for the check-in with his father, as he had been told, he was kidnapped for 66 days. So when he got there and he saw me, he was grateful, but I can see the great distress in the face of this little boy. I saw a child, as we went in for his check-in, cower in the corner of a chair in fetal position with his ears covered because he was so afraid to hear the words that he and his father heard the last time he was there. He was so afraid of going back to detention. So let me say it, and let me say it loud and clear in the people's house. Shame on every person in this country who thinks it is acceptable to terrorize children. Shame on you who talks about being the party of children and family who's locking them up in cages, who's separating them from their loved ones, from their community, denying them from air, from sun, from play, from laughter, from joy, and every single thing a baby, a child deserve. President Mandela said, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way that it treats its children. Incarcerating children is an evil, morally bankrupt practice that calls into question any commitment our nation has or claims to care about their preciousness. We must unleash our collective outrage. Don't look away and don't normalize children in cages. We must demand that no other children experience what Stephen has experienced, or more than 3,800 children have experienced in ICE so far. We will melt ICE, and I have a bill to do just that. We will dismantle the Department of Homeland Security because, frankly, at this juncture, nothing less is acceptable. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from Wisconsin, Ms. Moore.
Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the Trump administration's careless and cruel family separation policies. Experts like the Society for Research in Child Development and the American Academy of Pediatrics agree that immigration, detention, and separation is a deeply traumatic, adverse childhood experience causing post-traumatic stress disorder, and it is never in the best interest of the child. Yet, day after day, ICE continues to abduct children from their families, subjecting them to prison-like confinement and conditions and exposing them to lifelong trauma. Since President Trump took office, the number of children held in ICE detention each day has increased sixfold. And by October of 2025, at least 3,800 children had entered ICE custody, and more than 1,300 of them were detained for over 20 days. Mr. Speaker, these are not just numbers. These are real children, human beings whose lives have been disrupted and damaged permanently. And DHS facilities often fail to meet the basic standards of care: decent and adequate food, including medical care and mental health care. We just cannot stand by and watch while the administration forcibly separates families, inflicts long-term trauma on our nation's youth, and strips our youth of safety and dignity. And I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentleman from California, Mr. Vargas.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentlelady for yielding. The Trump administration's immigration crackdown has unleashed a cruelty that really knows no limits. Trump's ICE agents have beaten, tear-gassed, and murdered innocent people. They have wrongfully detained and deported U.S. citizens. But nothing demonstrates the cruelty of this administration more than the way that they have treated children, as we've heard today. There has been a six-fold increase in the daily number of children in ICE detention under Trump. Children, as we heard, like Liam Conejo Ramos, the little boy in the little blue hat who was detained on his walk home from school and sent to the Diley Family Detention Center. Children like Susie, a 9-year-old detained at Diley, who in a letter released by ProPublica wrote, "I miss my school and my friends. I have been here for too long." A 9-year-old girl. My wife and I have 2 daughters. And the psalmist tells us in Psalm 127 that children are a blessing. They're not a burden, they're a blessing. And I can tell you for a fact, our children have been a blessing. And I remember my girls putting on little hats. I remember how much they loved those little hats. Those memories are etched in my heart. And I think every parent, when they saw that little boy with the blue hat, remembered their child and said, how can we be doing this in our own country? What immorality, what injustice. And yet we do it, and we do it every day. These children have been held captive in detention, are missing their friends, falling behind at school, and facing deplorable conditions, as we've heard today. Their health and wellness is deteriorating. And it's just not detention. Kids across the country are struggling under the constant threat of ICE. Children are being wrongfully deported. They deserve better. We will never forget the nightmare this administration has inflicted on children across our country. It's going to leave an indelible mark, an evil mark. We must hold this administration and ICE accountable. We cannot accept anything less. Remember our own children. I have to tell you, I have many friends on the other side, and I cherish their friendship. I pray with them on Thursdays. I know they love children. I know they love their own children. And yet, to allow this to happen is immoral. It's a crime. And we have to do something about this together. With that, I thank my colleagues, and I yield back to them.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from Washington and ranking member of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration Integrity, Security, and Enforcement, Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Representatives Dexter and Tonko, for hosting this incredibly important special order hour. Since Donald Trump was sworn in 14 months ago, DHS has terrorized our children. Every single day, 50 U.S. citizen children have had a parent detained. On average, over 11,000 American children in total. After Trump restarted the cruel practice of detaining families and children, ICE has jailed about 3,500 adults and children. That includes over 900 children jailed beyond the 20-day legal limit set by a long-standing legal settlement. More and more children are forced to appear in court alone as Trump has cut funding for legal representation. And let's just talk about what this all looks like. In Washington State, ICE arrested a mother dropping off her 4-year-old son at a preschool. In Oregon, masked ICE agents broke the car windows and arrested a father dropping off his son at preschool. In Chicago, ICE dragged a daycare worker out of the facility, slammed her face against the daycare's glass doors, and arrested her. And recently in Vermont, the community surrounded a home for hours as ICE sought to enter without a warrant. Demonstrators created a human tunnel, allowing a 4-year-old child wrapped in a blanket to escape the home, her mother desperate to get her to safety. This is horrifying, and we can't talk about any of this without recognizing the toll on our educators and our daycare workers who are on the front lines doing everything they can to protect our children, even as many of them are immigrants as well and face threats to their own safety. We've also seen federal agents use physical violence and chemical weapons indiscriminately. In Chicago, Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino deployed tear gas in a residential neighborhood as children were gathering for a Halloween parade. In the words of a federal judge, quote, "These kids, their sense of safety was shattered, and it's going to take a long time for that to come back," end quote. In Minneapolis, ICE deployed tear gas near a family in their car, causing a 6-month-old baby to stop breathing. All of this leads to lasting trauma for our children, regardless of their immigration status or whether they have an immigrant parent or family member. Here's what Allison Bassett-Ratto, a child clinical psychologist, has said about the harms to children. Quote, "What they see are their classmates, their family members, their neighbors, often being apprehended in violent and confusing ways while doing things like picking up their children from the bus stop or going to their jobs. For children, this creates a sense that nowhere and no one is safe. The stress, the anxiety, the trauma can become chronic, leading to both immediate and long-term damage to children's mental and physical health." Tomorrow, as ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, I will be holding a hearing entitled "Trump's Assault on Our Children," and we'll have legal and medical experts, educators, and directly impacted people who will testify to the harms and the trauma being caused to our children. Donald Trump ran on going after the so-called worst of the worst. It's been very clear that this was never his intent. He made it clear that chaos and cruelty go hand in hand with mass deportation. It's inflicting lasting trauma on our children, regardless of immigration status. Do not close your eyes. Do not close your eyes to this harm that our own government is inflicting on our children. Do not talk about Christian values or any other religious value and then traumatize our children. We will not stop fighting against this horror. We will not stop, because it is our responsibility in this body to make sure that our government is not traumatizing these kids. I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from Arizona, Ms. Grijalva.
Thank you, Representative Dexter. A 9-year-old boy named David told Miss Rachel, a well-known online educator, in a recent interview, "Can you help us leave here? I don't want to be here anymore. I want to leave and go to the spelling bee." This is so heartbreaking, cruel, and reprehensible. It shows the real harm caused by immigration policies pushed by Trump. And the Republican Party isn't just watching. It's supporting, defending, and funding it. Our children, nuestros niños, our babies, are being locked in detention, separated from their families, and traumatized. There are too many stories like David's, and each one is a moral failure of our government and this administration. No family deserves this. No one deserves this. David has been released, but what about the hundreds of babies and children who haven't? Who will be torn from their parents next? Who will be disappeared next? These children don't belong locked away in jails. They belong in classrooms. They belong at school, learning, dreaming, and preparing for spelling bees, not living in constant fear that they will be taken away from their families, from their friends, and disappeared. How does locking up our babies make this country safer? This is not politics. This is a moral crisis, and it is on all of us, on every single one of us, to act. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Rivas.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dexter, for hosting this conversation, and Congressman Tonko, for hosting this conversation that shines a light on ICE's cruelty. I have seen firsthand the cruelty of ICE in my district, the San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles. Last year, a mother and 2 children were detained at the Van Nuys courthouse after a judge dismissed their asylum case. They were immediately taken by ICE and sent to the Dilley Detention Center in Texas. My casework team worked to release them from ICE custody and return them back to Van Nuys. I'm grateful for my team for working to keep my constituents safe and for helping to bring them home. However, they never should have been in this position. My constituents were following the rules and obeying the laws, and I still took them and sent them to Texas to live in horrid conditions. They were part of the over 68,000 people who have been in ICE detention, and the kids were part of the over 3,800 children booked into ICE custody. ICE is terrorizing families and inflicting unspeakable harm on our most vulnerable. Despite all of this, Donald Trump and Republicans continue to refuse to hold ICE accountable. Children, parents, and our communities are not safe if ICE continues to operate as is. To truly protect them, ICE must be abolished. Thank you, and I yield back to Congresswoman Dexter.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Tonko.
Well, it's an honor to co-host this special order, Congresswoman Dexter. And again, thank you for your caring voice. Obviously, listening to these horrific stories that are impacting our children in this nation is very difficult to absorb. The Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement has increased its coordination with ICE. That partnership is very troublesome. It bothers me to think of what can happen. And ORR is sharing data on prospective guardians for unaccompanied children with ICE. And then ICE is increasingly using these children as lures to detain family members. Our children should not be used as pawns. This, as a civilized nation, has an image cast to the entire world. A civilized nation nurtures its children. A civilized nation respects its children. A civilized nation loves its children. Where's our moral compass here? Beyond the impact on these children and families, beyond the hurt, the physical and mental damage, there's an image cast to the entire world that this uncivilized behavior is a scar on our history, one that indicates that unaccompanied children are now waiting for an average of more than 200 days in ORR detention, despite the many, many family members who are ready and able to care for them. That is more than double the highest average seen during the first Trump administration of some 93 days. And yes, more than 6 times as long as the 30-day average seen under the Biden administration. The Office of the Inspector General found that the longer that children remain in ORR custody, the more likely they have to exhibit mental health or behavioral issues. Think about that. We're inflicting damage on children, innocent children escaping harm in their native land, perhaps, or asking just to live their version of the American dream. Longer stays in ORR detention are leading to more instances of self-harm and suicidal ideation. So we can and we must do better. Congresswoman, it is so important that these stories are shared this afternoon with the American public because it challenges us, it inspires us to respond, to reach out to our representatives, to speak to this government and the way it's conducting itself in regard to children. They are not pawns. They should not be impacted so severely and have lifetime damage. We're a better people than that. We're a better nation than that. And we are proud as a country and should maintain that sense of pride by doing right, by doing just, by doing fair by all children, our children. And with that, I see we've been joined by another colleague, so Representative Dexter, I'll yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you. I rise today because our country has normalized something that should never be normal: locking up kids. Under the Trump administration, ICE has detained thousands of children, many of them under 5 years old. As a representative from San Diego, an immigrant and border community, I've seen firsthand the consequences of our immigration system. And as someone who has spent my career working on human rights, I can tell you that this is state-sanctioned child abuse. These children are not threats. They are not statistics. They are kids. Some just babies and toddlers who have fled violence, poverty, and instability. They have done nothing wrong. Many have experienced trauma before they ever set foot on American soil. And instead of care, instead of compassion, we are detaining them and traumatizing them for life. And to be honest, I don't actually care what their parents may or may not have done. Children should not be punished for their parents' actions. 2 weeks ago, I went to Dilley Immigration Detention Center in Texas, the primary site for family detention in our country. What I saw and what I heard would rattle any parent, and it should disturb everyone. Kids have nightmares so bad that they wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Teenagers are regressing developmentally and wetting the bed. The classrooms were empty, the playground was empty. There was no joy or laughter, just the look of fear and despair in people's eyes. The mom of a 3-year-old told me her daughter was anxious and depressed, but the nurse said she was fine because she hadn't lost too much weight yet, so they didn't help her. This kind of fear, this kind of uncertainty doesn't just go away. It will follow these kids. It will shape their development and leave lasting scars. And this isn't just my observation. The American Academy of Pediatrics has said for years that detaining children causes toxic stress that can permanently alter brain development. Pediatricians call it institutional harm. When medical professionals are telling us that what we're doing to these kids causes the same neurological damage as physical abuse, we need to stop calling it immigration policy and start calling it for what it is. I know immigration is complicated. I know that there are strong opinions on all sides of this issue. But protecting children should not be controversial. Ensuring that children are treated with dignity and care should not be political or partisan. But apparently it is, because the Republican Party, the so-called pro-family party, is complicit in child abuse. Well, I won't be complicit. My colleagues and I will not be complicit. We need to shut down Dilley and end family detention for good. And we need to reject the idea that locking up children and their parents is an acceptable response to migration.
That means Congress needs to do its job and cut off funding for family detention and claw back the $75 billion blank check that was given to ICE and Border Patrol. And while we're at it, not a single committee in this House has held a hearing on conditions inside family detention facilities, not one. Republicans control every gavel in this building, and they have conducted zero oversight of what is being done to children in our government's custody. If they won't do oversight, we will. And when we have the majority, Dilley will be the first place we go. Many of us in this chamber have children of our own, and while I don't have kids yet, I wouldn't be able to live with myself and look my 4 nieces and nephews in the eye if I weren't doing everything in my power to protect all kids. So I urge all my colleagues to look their kids in their eyes tonight and imagine them locked up in these conditions, and then work with us to end family detention. Thank you, and thank you, Congresswoman Dexter, for your leadership on this issue. I yield back.
Thank you very much. I spent 20 years taking care of the sickest members of our community as a critical care and pulmonary physician. I have seen what happens when people are unable to get the care that they need. Preventable illnesses escalate and become deadly. At Dilley, there have been repeated reports of children's medical needs not being met, resulting in life-threatening health problems. That includes a 2-year-old with infected gums that Dilley staff did not treat for over 23 days, leading her to have a fever, infection, cry relentlessly, and forced to have a diet of only liquids. It includes an 18-month-old baby who went to the hospital for 10 days when her oxygen levels were dangerously low. A 10-year-old child with Hirschsprung's disease who lacked proper medical care resulted in no bowel movements for over a month. Families report something even more disturbing. When they ask for help, they are dismissed, belittled, and mocked. One person reported that they were laughed at by guards while vomiting and pleading to see a doctor. If any hospital in this country treated children this way, we would shut it down. We would investigate. We would hold people accountable. Instead, our tax dollars are funding it. It is reprehensible. Reprehensible. I call on my colleagues for an immediate end to cruel immigration enforcement against children. Defund and dismantle ICE. Do you want to go? Okay. And now I yield back to my colleague from New York, Mr. Tonko.
Well, again, I appreciate the opportunity for all of us to share our thoughts here this afternoon. And, you know, I'm reminded that ICE has been redetaining children who were previously approved to stay with family members. You know, it seems as though cruel has to be the additive to all of these actions. It's not enough to take that first step, then redetain. And then sponsors are being asked to provide additional information, including fingerprints and DNA. And so there's an all-out attempt to dismantle the peace and tranquility of so many families and to make, again, children pawns in this process. Discharges to sponsors have declined dramatically, and over 5,000 unaccompanied children were released to an individual sponsor back in January of 2025. What's that number look like now? In April, that number dropped to just 45. So again, the cruelty continues. You know, we see in the news every day the plummeting of the Trump administration's popularity. And that's pretty much earned. America disrespects the kind of behavior that is hallmark of this administration, creating trauma amongst children and parents. They must end cruel immigration enforcement against kids now. And I know that we've been joined by our colleague from Texas, Congresswoman, so I'm going to yield back to hear his story. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give my colleague just a moment and tell you about a family who are not immigrant children. They are Americans, 4 Americans. Jackie Merlos and her children went to the border, the Canadian border, with her mother, who had a visiting visa from Honduras, to come and see her sister and her nieces and nephews who live in Canada as permanent legal residents. So they drove to the Peace Park. And they went there to have a family reunion, a picnic. There's no intention for any guided actions. They just wanted to have a picnic and a reunion. Now, Jackie has an asylum case, an active asylum case, has lived in the United States for over 20 years, and has an active work permit. She's done everything right. And as they hugged, ICE agents, CBP agents, swarmed the family and detained all of them. Now, luckily, her sister lives in Canada, where they released her fairly quickly. But Jackie was accused of trafficking, human trafficking, as if her sister and her nieces and nephews wanted to come into the United States. She was kept with her 4 children, 7-year-old triplets and their 9-year-old, in a windowless cell at the border in Ferndale, Washington, for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks. This is not a facility meant for long-term detention. It is a facility meant for 48 hours or less stays. There's no showers, there's no kitchen to make food for them, and they kept them there. And I had the ability to go and see this family, but I wasn't allowed to talk to them. And we were told that they were being moved back or sent back home, and that Jackie had asked for that. It was a lie. Jackie had never signed any paperwork. She has 4 U.S. children. She knew she'd done everything right, and she refused. But we were lied to. I, as a U.S. Congresswoman, was lied to. And eventually, we had a habeas corpus case, and Jackie was released. Her children had been released as they were about to deport them. Let me also say, her husband was taken into detention after her children were questioned individually, without their mother there, by CBP agents. And they asked where they live and how much money do they make. And her father was detained from their own home, and he was detained to the Northwest Detention Facility. And while he was there, Customs and Border Patrol took pictures of the children and took them to their father and asked, "Is this your child?" and had him sign. Well, he was signing passport applications. He reads Spanish. They were in English. Our government was trying to deport, which isn't really a thing at all, American citizens against the will of their parents. And they lied to the U.S. Congresswoman about whether or not they wanted to be sent home. They wouldn't allow me to see Jackie. They wouldn't let me talk to her. And they absolutely were on the border of sending the fringe. They were at SeaTac Airport being sent when we finally got them to cease and desist. This is what your taxpayer dollars are paying for. These are U.S. citizen children with a mother who had done everything right. Shame on us. This has to stop. And with that, I now yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro.
Thank you, Congresswoman. You know, we have seen and we've witnessed the brutality on the streets of America by ICE. We saw 2 Americans killed, many people brutalized. Just the other day in the San Francisco airport, we saw a mother who was ripped away from her 9-year-old daughter. We saw that replayed in courthouses across the country, in neighborhoods, in cities across America. We've seen that mostly on television or social media as people have posted it up. But there's another brutality that most Americans have not gotten a chance to see, that you and I have both witnessed, that only members of Congress and a few others have had a chance to see. It's also a brutality by ICE. It's the way that children and families are treated at the Dilley trailer prison in Dilley, Texas. I've been there multiple times now, and I've seen the suffering of the young kids who will be traumatized for life. As you know, They've talked about worms in their food, about being separated from a parent. There's some there who have no clue why they're there. Dilley is unique in America in that I can't think of another place where you would imprison a 5-year-old boy like Liam Ramos, who has committed no crime. And during this discussion and this debate about these prisons, there has been a temptation to direct the anger at ICE and at the people that work there, and I certainly understand that. But there's another group of people that we don't talk about much who are making millions, if not billions of dollars off of child suffering. As a country, we have made a decision to commodify child suffering, to allow investors to profit from child imprisonment, innocent child imprisonment. There was a baby at Dilley that was 2 months old. First time I went there, I asked who the youngest child was, a 2-month-old baby. Some of the largest asset managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, have stakes in these private prison companies, in Core Civic that runs Dilley, or GEO that ran the South Texas ICE Processing Center where we visited several weeks ago. We have to shut down the Dilley Detention Center, that trailer prison that has done so much damage to the kids and to the families who are there. Kids like the mariachi boys who came to this Capitol at the invitation of their congresswoman and performed their mariachi music, toured the White House, and yet, along with their parents, were thrown into this trailer prison in Dilley. Unfortunately, because of an ensemble effort and so many Americans that spoke up, members of Congress that spoke up, this wonderful group of pediatric doctors, mostly women, who've been very active in pleading people's cases, they were released. And also, fortunately, at Dilley, the first time I went there in January, there were 1,100 people there. The next time, there were 450 people. On Monday, there were only 102 people still at the Dilley trailer prison. Keep speaking up. We need to shut Dilley down.
Thank you. Thank you again to all of my colleagues who joined us today and who spoke with such clarity and urgency. What we heard this afternoon makes one thing clear. Immigration enforcement against children is inhumane and unnecessary. Families can and should be able to navigate their immigration cases together and in community with the support of loved ones and legal service providers. Detention harms children. It harms their physical health. It harms their mental health. Even after they are released, that trauma stays with them for life. And for so many children, the harm starts long before detention ever happens. It starts with fear. For months now, every single school group that has come into my office or that I have visited has raised ICE as one of its top concerns. Elementary students, middle schoolers, high schoolers, even college students. For all of them, ICE is the top concern. At a time when teachers aren't getting paid enough and the Department of Education is getting gutted, young people are coming to Congress and asking, how can we stop our friends from being taken away? This administration is traumatizing an entire generation. That's why we are here today to call for an end to cruel immigration enforcement against children, end child detention, defund and dismantle ICE, and save our children from this nightmare. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.